Blatt is Daf Ches Amud Aleph, and the Gemara starts in the middle of the page. The last thing we learned was actually an interesting thing that Mila Besela Mishtuki Betrain, that silence sometimes is golden. And just a quick interesting story. One of the Gerer Rebbes was by the Rebbe Yechidus, and the Rebbe said to him, he just came from Yisrael, and it says in Mabasa that Avira that Yisrael is Machkim. So say something special. So the Gerer Rebbe said, because it says Mila Besela B'Shtiku B'Treis, he'll be quiet. Now that he's so smart, he'll have to be quiet. So the Rebbe said to him, the Pshat Gemara is as follows: Mila Besela, every word you say is worth a stella. B'Shtuka, but if you're quiet today, it's worth two. So if you have what to say, and it takes 5 words to say it, you already made 5 slayim. But silence can never be worth more than 2 slayim. So therefore, the Gemara is saying, if you have what to say, say. If you don't, then don't say. Okay, let's continue the Gemara. We're 3 lines into the wide lines. Says the Gemara, if you read the Megilah by heart and not Yitzim, how do you know you can't read it by heart? Amar Rav, we learn out Zechira. We learn out remembering the story by Purim, from remembering the story by Amalek. It says here, these days should be remembered. There it says, write this down as a memory in your sefer, Mechias Amalek. Malahal, just like that, Besefer has to be in a sefer. I've come over here also, Besefer in a sefer. How do you know the high Zechira Krihi? How do you know Zechira means to actually read when it comes to Megillah? Dilma Iyam Ba'alma, it means just to think about it. Lo Yisal Kadat, can't think that. It says, Zocher, by Amalek, it says, Zocher, like Tishkach. Why? If you remember, obviously you don't forget. Zocher, I remember, I could have argued Yochel Beleb. It says, like Tishkach, Hari Shikchas Alev. That's already in the heart. Hamani Mekayim Zocher, why say remember? Velashichem, means don't forget. So why have to say remember? It means bepeh, it means with your mouth. So you have to actually remember the what do you call it? And to do something about the story of Megillah. So that's how I know you can't do it by heart. Okay, says the Gemara further. Based on this, the Mecheshes wants to say that the mitzvah is different in the mitzvah of a man and a woman. Why a woman cannot be mitzvah a man, because by a man we learn now that the mitzvah is from Mechilas Amalek, and there is like a Muhammad, and women don't have the mitzvah Muhammad. So therefore, men's mitzvah is Asiyat Megillah, and women's mitzvah is the Shmir, because we have also this incorporated this inyan of Amalek. Kora Targum lo yotz. If you read it in Targum or any other language, you're not yotz. Heichel, what are we talking about? It's written in Hebrew. You read it in a different language. You're reading it orally. We just said it's not yotz. Lo yitzich. We're talking about the Chsiva Targum. It's written in Targum, and you read it in Targum, and it says you're not yotz, which is a bit hard. We'll see in a minute. But yet you can read it in other people's languages. Laz is Loshen Amzu, whatever the language the native tongue is. So Gemara said, what are you talking about? Amrit you just said if you read in any other language, you're not Yotze, and then you tell me you can read in any language you want. What's going on here? So the first answer the Gemara gives is Belaz Yavoni. We're talking about in Greek. We're talking about over here that in Greek you can read it in any language. In Greek you can read it, but not in other languages. Okay, that's what Gemara says it. Okay, so further. Hey, I don't understand. If it's written in Hebrew language, you read it in Greek, I know up again, it's no good. So it's written in the Greek language, and you can only read it. It's written in the Greek language, and you can only read it. Only language that's acceptable is Greek. As we'll soon come back to this, how exactly to learn Pshat in Gemara. So the Gemara will come back in a minute. It says the first before that we digress for a minute. It says the Gemara, Rabacha says in the name of Abelazar, Yaakov Kel. So Rabacha says in the name of Abelazar, how do you know that Yaakov referred to how do you know that the Eibishter called Yaakov Kel? Remember it says, "Vayikra lo Kel Elokei Yisrael." He called that the Mizbeach there, and we touched the pasuk that the Abish, okay, so called Yaakov Kel. So these are that Yaakov, that's from Yaakov, and Yaakov referred to as as Kel. Vayikra lo Yaakov miboye. You should have said that Yaakov called it. Ela vayikra lo li Yaakov Kel. It says that vayikra lo who the Abish called Yaakov Kel. Mikora Kel, okay, so the Abish is the one who actually called him Kel. Okay, this is digression. It says the Gemara. Because Rabbi Acham Rabbi Elazar is the one who said that he wrote it in Lashon Yavanis, so we said something else that he said. It's not that often that he said something in Rabbi Elazar, so therefore we mentioned this digression. Now we come back to our original thing. Basically, I'll ask a question. It says in the Baraisa, Korah, you say Yavanis, it's talking about Yavanis, written in Greek, you can read it in Greek. It says, you read it in Giftis, which is Coptic or Ivris, or Elamis, or Modis, or Yavanis, Lo Yotzes. It says clearly, the Baraisa, you're not Yotzes with Yavanis. When it says you're right, Hole Damya, we're actually going to compare it to another day, another brayse, where it says the gift is legiftim, that gift can be read to giftim, ivrit leivrim, elmim elmim, and yivonis levonim, yotze yotze. So now we're coming up with a new answer. When we say that you're not yotze other languages, is talking about you read to people who don't understand the language. But if you're reading it to people who do understand the language, you can read it in any language, any tongue. So we're talking about the Megilah. So you might ask a question. So then why talk about Yavonis? So why did the Rav Shmuel say we're talking about the Greek language? Any language if they understand the Yotzi. Why tell us the Mishnah is talking about in Greek? Look at B'cholas. Any language if they understand it's good enough. Elamasnisi in Kibraisa. No, our Mishnah holds like the Braisa that. As long as our Mishnah agrees with the Brisa, that as long as they understand any language is good enough. So why is Rav Shmuel talking about Greek? They weren't even referring to our Mishnah. So right now we're answering that our Mishnah holds, when the Mishnah says you're not Yotze other languages, is if they don't understand it. But if they do understand it, you can read any language you want. So what's so special about Greek? Nothing. Stop telling you a general comment, like we had in the beginning more before. That the Greek language is kosher for everybody. In other words, even if they don't understand, in other words, all other languages are only good if you understand the language. If you don't understand the language, you're not Yotze. But Greek is like Lashon Kodesh. Lashon Kodesh, even though you don't understand it, you're Yotze. Greek too, even though you don't understand it, you're Yotze. But in this very price it says, but Yavonis also you have to understand. Greek also you have to understand. Says the Gemara only for those who understand Greek. Gemara says, you're right, that's what the Brisa says. But Inu the Rav Shmuel paskin like Rav Shimon Gamliel that Greek is different than all other languages. And what that is, that now we learned that Rashbag holds that also Sfarim cannot be written only Yavonis, only Yavonis, only Greek, and that's what they're saying here. So Rav Shmuel are pasking like Rav Shimon Gamliel that even though our Mishnah holds you can read any language you want, but they hold Rav Shimon Gamliel you cannot read any language, even if they understand it. Only Greek is the only language you can use. So just say that outright. If they were to say, "Look, Rav Gamliel, have never thought Hanimili Shar Svarim." I was told that's talking about Sifrei Kodesh that you can read only in Greek. Avol Megilah the Kasebe Kiksav Memelai, but Megilah says clearly Kiksav. We would have thought that you can't. It has to be that you can do any languages. Kamashwan comes to teach you that even when it comes to Megillah, it's only Greek and no other language. So in other words, we would have thought. So according to Rav Shimon ben Gamliel comes out that we would have thought all other Sfarim can only be Greek and other language, and Megillah we would have thought should be even more limited, only Hebrew. Kamashwan, you can do it in Greek. The Chachamim who argue the Rashbag, according to many Rishonim, hold all other Sfarim you can read any language you want, but Megillah may be only in Hebrew because maybe Megillah can only be in Hebrew because it says Kiksava, and or Megillah can be done also in other languages because it says Kiksavam ukil Shainam, like their languages, so maybe you could. So the big machlek is in halacha how we go, but we already say that today the Greek language is not the same Greek language as then. Says the Gemara, if somebody speaks other languages, yet if he hears in Hebrew, it's good enough. How come the other might come has no idea what's going on? It says media to have anoshim amoratzim or women who didn't have an education. They don't understand Hebrew either, and yet they're yotze. So everybody's yotze Hebrew, whether you understand it or not. The reason is when it comes to davening, if you don't understand Lashon Kodesh and you understand and you can daven in your native tongue, what's better? You're definitely yotze in Hebrew, but what's better, to daven in your native tongue, or is it better to daven in Lashon HaKodesh? The machlekes out to Rebbe and Mishnah Berurah. Maskil or Ravina. Ravina has a question. Otu anan, you're saying to me that that you have to understand. He's saying further. What was the question in the first place? Otu anan ha'achashtronim b'nei ha'ramochim. Didn't we know every word in Megilah what it means? We have no idea what those words mean. So therefore, of course, we don't have to understand. Even we don't have to understand everything. Now, why are we yotze? Because we have a general idea what's going on. Same thing here. Even if you don't understand at all, you'll ask people what we just read. They'll give you a general gist of it, and that's good enough. If you read Sirugin, that means you read, what does it mean exactly? My Rabban had no idea what the Sirugin means. Shamu, they heard, the maid of Rebbe, the Kamala, she said, they were coming in groups, and then there was an interval, and another group were coming into Rebbe's house, and she said to them, Ad Mosai Atem Nichnosim Sirugin, until when will you come in like in groups and then pause? So now they knew what it meant is if you read a part of Megilah, you pause, you read a part of Megilah, you pause, that's called Sirugin. And therefore you yotze. Rabban, my Rabban, I know what kind of vegetable chalaglugis was. We already had this in Shon as well. We have some other Gemaras where they learned different things from people working in Rebbe's house, an employee of Rebbe. So they once heard that they didn't know what chalaglugis was. Shmuel Amsel Rebbe heard the maid of Rebbe. Who said the person that become a vada papachini was separating over there some kind of a vegetable called papachini. And she said to him, till when are you going to continue to scatter this chaluglois? So they knew exactly what it was. Give a few other examples of things they had no idea what it was, but only because they heard from someone else a word, they realized what it means. The other Rabban had no idea what it means. Salsala, you should do salsala, but to Rebecca, it will lift you. What's salsala? Shulam said the person of Mazi was going ahead and trying to cut his hair, and he was going through his hair, and he was picking up his hair. Must have to salsal. Until when you're going to dig into your hair. So they realize what the pasuk means. If you dig into your learning, until you get into Torah, you'll be elevated. It says to him, you should throw onto the Eibishter your havcha. What does Yahavcha mean? Once Havazil about the Ahutai was going with his peddler because or his business person because Darina Tuna was carrying a pekel. But Amali said to me, "Shkoil Yahavach, why don't you take your pekel? B'shadi agamle, put in my camel." So then I know Yahavach means your package. The Rabbanan know what it means. It says in Pasuk these words and had no idea what the words means. It says your tata seh together with the tata hashman you will destroy. What does that mean? Shabul said to her friend, "Shikuli tati," he said, take a broom. The tata basically clean up the house, sweep up the house. So then they realized what it means that that will sweep away all this destruction. Says a little further. Tell them what we learned. Korah sirugin. If you read sirugin, a manner of sirugin, you are yotze. But if you read sirusin lo yotze, read it backwards, you're not yotze. Yesterday we discussed three different opinions when it comes to Krishma. What mafreya lo yotze mean? Literally, like Rashi learns there word for word backwards. But sentences will be all right. Does it mean that sentences, if you reverse order, sentences are not good, but paragraphs are all right, or even paragraphs are no good? When it comes to the Megillah, because it's one story, then even the prokim have to be done in a particular sequence. Says about it further. Also, sirugin, when we say a pause, it's all right. But if the pause is long enough that you could have continued the entire Megillah during that pause and completed it, then you got to go back to the beginning. In this version, Rabbi Yosef said Allah. Now what? If you pause too long, you have to start again. How long should this pause be? Let's say you're in Perek Vav. Is it the time it takes to read from Perek Vav to the end? The time it would have taken, doesn't matter, you have to Perek Vav, but if the time that you pause is long enough to start from Perek Aleph to get to Perek Yud to the end, then it's considered too long and it's a break and you have to start again. Amalei, Mereishal, has to be from the beginning to the end. Otherwise, Every person will be a different amount. This guy's at the Perek Vav will be 10 minutes. This guy Perek Zayin will be 8 minutes. Can't work that way. You have to have one rule for everyone. It fits all. The pause is too long. You have to start again. We actually had Rabbi Yechon said in Rosh Hashanah, you can blow 9 kiyas and the entire day, even though there are great many pauses in between. This is how they learned the version in Surah. That Shmuel is the one who said the halacha is not like Rabbi Meina, and that pauses can be as long as you want. But this is learned it the following way. The Rav said halacha Rabbi Meina, which Shmuel said halacha Rabbi Meina. Sorry, so this in Surah learned this way, and Bris learned this way. Rav Kahana is one who said that it wasn't Rabbi Abba named Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabba, but it was Rav Kahana. But basically the same thing. That Rav said the halacha is like a minor. 2 pauses that too long is a break. A hefsek to start again. The Shmuel said the halacha is not like a minor, and that you have what? That you have you pause as long as you want. However, there's another version. Rabbi Masnibcha that Rav says ain't halacha. And Shmuel's halacha and halacha like Rav that you can pause, and it's not a hefsek. In this version, Rabbi Yosef said the koyt Rabbi the other. Bibi is right, and halacha is like Rav. And why Shmuel say that the pause is too long, you have to start again? Because Shmuel generally likes to be machmir, even though it's a single opinion. The Shmuel who the chayish lechidah. Shmuel is the one who's machmir, even if it's a single opinion. If it's a chumrah, he likes it. What do you mean? Because it's non we learned. Shemeres yavam shekidish achir chaydin is that if a woman is the husband, if a woman passed away. And the husband passed away. This woman now has to marry one of the brothers or get a chalitza. And now what happens if there's only one brother? Then she is zokuk to that brother. That means they have like a bond, and she cannot marry anybody else, obviously, till they either go ahead with the marriage or they have a chalitza. Now, if this sister-in-law has a sister, that otherwise you would have been, if she would have been married to your brother, you could have married his sister. The other brother could have married his sister. But now she is like the sister of your wife, because Kozman, she didn't get a chalitza or something happened, then this remaining sister, the sister of this Yavama, is like the sister of your wife. We treat the Yavama as if it's your wife until you decide if you give a chalitza or not. But what about if there's more than one brother? 2 or 3, 4 brothers. Every brother have to feel that let my other brother marry this woman, and therefore I'm not tied to this Yavama, so I could marry her sister. So the Chacham say yes, you can marry the sister because you're not necessarily tied to this Yavama. Another brother can marry her. However, we learn Shemedes Yavam Shekir Zachar the Chaysim Shem Yudam says we tell him Hamtin wait actually as a Gadol Meister Kols man somebody didn't marry this woman or give her a chalitza. All the brothers are connected to her, and therefore her sister is like the sister of your wife. And he's a lone opinion, but he's machmir. And what happens? So we see that Shmuel likes to be machmir, even though it's a lone opinion. So we learned when Udin Hishbet was Sefer Oisi. Let's say a few letters are missing in the Megilah Psukim. And therefore, if the Koder reads it, even though it's part Bahar, he is Yaitz. He is Yaitz. Meisvei, the question says how you but Oisi is mitushtosh. So they have letters that were sort of fading away. They were all, mixed up and not mixed up, or messy. You couldn't read it, very illegible. I mean, could also rip. You can still tell what the letters are. Is possible. So we see clearly that if words are missing, the Megillah is rendered possible. Like Kash, it's not a question. If the entire Megillah, or actually if the majority of Megillah words are missing or it's illegible, then it's possible. But if it's less than half Megillah, it's kosher. And that is why all Seifrim, when they practice Safros, the first thing they write is the Megillah. Because letters are missing, words are missing, it's still kosher. That's what we learned. The one who read the Megillah missed out a pasuk. He shouldn't say, I'll continue reading the Megillah and I'll come back to it later. You got to go back and start from there. As I said before, it has to be in an order. He walked into Shul, you found the minion raised in the middle reading Megillah. You can't say, well, I'll hear the rest and then I'll go another minion here the first half. I'll read half with the minion, and after I'll read the other half by myself. So it has to be done in correct order, and therefore you have to start from the beginning. Misnamnim yotze, if you dozed off, you yotze. Hechidami, we already had this in more a few times. What's the definition of misnamnim, dozing off? Rashi, nim v'loy nim, asleep but not really asleep, and tiv lakir, up but not really up. How do we measure that? The Kodol, if you call him by his name, he'll answer. If you ask him to ask anything that requires thinking, he's not able to do that. If you remind later of the conversation, he'll remember. Let's say the Sefer was writing Megilah Dosha, Dashi, Megilah, editing it, and keep if you had a mind, what actually happened here? So in the Mishnah in Brachas, when it talks about Krishma, it talks about if you were editing the Torah, and you had a mind Krishma. But here we're talking about you were writing the Megillah. So what actually did you have in the Megillah? There's two ways of how this is happening. You were saying it by heart, and then you were writing it. So then there's nothing to talk about. You're saying it by heart. How can it be Eitzah? Or you wrote the word down, and then you read it. And there's a problem with that as well, because while you're reading it, the Megillah is incomplete. Saying, what are we talking about? He's saying by heart every passage, then he just writes it down. Who cares? Saying by heart. But obviously, it's talking about that he's reading pasuk, that he first wrote down the pasuk and then he read it. Nevertheless, that you need halachas, you need to read the entire Megillah. And by even one says that Ishihud is good enough, the way the Mishnah says, but the Megillah itself has to be complete. Ella is talking about here the mancha Megillah kamei. The when you write a sefer, you should have another proper sefer next to it, and you read a word in, then you write it down here. So we're talking about you have a kosher Megillah on the left side there, which you're using as your basis for copying and writing a proper Megillah. And so he's saying if you're reading the Megillah that you're taking information from, and you have in mind while you're reading those words, and that's a complete Megillah, then you're all right. This actually supports the fact that you told us that you had another Megillah there. That's the only way to understand Pshat. Doesn't that prove that he's right, that the halacha is you cannot write a Megillah by heart? You have to have another Megillah in front of you to be able to record it. The Gemara says, no, not yet. You might be right in halacha, but you can't make it right from here. We're talking about a case where you happen to have another Megillah. Doesn't mean necessarily you have to have it. Let's analyze it. You're not allowed to write anything down if you didn't have an original sefer to record from. I'll ask you a question. He went to make a leap year. There was no Megillah available. The cost from Beliboy, and he wrote it by heart. The Korah, and he read it. So we see he could write a sefer Torah by heart. The Meir is very different. The Mekayim by him we can say the pasuk, the Afa Pecha, and your eyes, Yashiru Negdecha, straight before you. In other words, he had the entire Torah in front of his eyes. He knew the whole Torah by heart, word for word. He wouldn't make any mistakes. So therefore, he didn't have to have a sefer to copy from. What do you mean by this pasuk? We're referring to Torah, the Chsibu, it says, if you bat an eyelid, and you suddenly disappears. No, it's Torah. It's very hard to remember. If you don't chazer all the time, you forget it very, very quickly. Keheref ayin, as the pasuk says, as Rashi says. I feel hachi miyashonis, but a man had it right in front of him all the time. Chizda Ashker of Hanan, was met of Hanan because he was writing Svarim Shalom in Aksab, Amalei, Ruya Kos Picha. He said, look, you say you're doing it by heart. The truth of the matter is you know the whole Torah. Kach Omru Chachamim, what should I do? The Chachamim said, also licht of Ois Acha Shalom in Aksab. You're not allowed to write anything by heart. The fact that they said that you should know that everything is that Hanan, that you know the whole Torah by heart. He's just like Rameir. He knew the whole Torah, and yet he's told that you cannot do it by heart. So when as a shiny Rameir is different because they didn't have access to a Torah. That's different. Abai Shadi he allowed that film mezuzah to be written by heart. Command like the following that film mezuzah can be written by heart. And neither of them need that etched lines there in the bottom. We learned a few days ago, Machlekes in Rashi and Talmud about Sefer Torah, you have to have those etched lines. And we said, according to this opinion, it says that film mezuzah don't need these etched lines. The hilchos of the halach, however, is tefillin ain't sicher sirtut, The halacha is that tefillin do not need any sirtut, and no, it's tefillin do not need these etch lines. Mezuzah tzrichen sirtut. Mezuzah do need sirtut, but tefillin don't need sirtut. And even though tefillin and actually that's halacha mashum sinai. Even though tefillin doesn't need sirtut, according to some of the shaynim, you have to have the top line sirtut, so the rest can be written properly. And similar on Beis Halacha, it says that we do it anyway because al hidur mitzvah, and therefore to make it straight lines, everything else we do. Either we do the Tavash Shloim and Aksav, and both of them, tefillin and mezuzah, can both be written by heart. My time, but why? Migris grisim, because everyone knows it by heart. Okay, that finishes today's blot.